Ponder, wake up.
The Hearthian blinked 4 sleepy eyes and rolled to see Chuck crouched close to them. The artificial light of the stranger had changed to a morning glow. The fire was burned down to embers, and the others were still asleep.
I have a bad feeling all of a sudden. I think we need to get back, she said.
They got up and packed right away. Gabbro roused just enough for Chuck to thank him warmly. Hal and Ryback were fast asleep, too. Ryback must have stayed up all night dreaming of ways to cross a language barrier without visual aids, hoping to add another species to their list of otherworldly conversation partners. They were snoring loudly, and nothing would wake them up. Hal got the raft ready and ferried Chuck and Ponder around the loop of the river. With a friendly goodbye, they dropped him off at a dock and pointed to a stairway leading up toward the dam. Ponder tempered Chuck's expectations as they headed back through the corridors to the equipment room. The ship's probably not ready yet. That'd be record time for how that metal was crumpled in. But there was Tephra. The engineering apprentice was sprawled on their back, sleeping just as deeply as Ryback. They were still in their spacesuit, with their helmet in their arms. They were surrounded by tools and scrap metal. It looked incredibly uncomfortable, but they must have been exhausted after fixating on their task all night. "Oh, geez," Ponder said. "We ought to get them something nice for their trouble." The ship was in perfect shape, and soon they were launching on their return journey to the lunar outpost.
"Can we radio ahead?" Chuck asked. "I'd feel better if we did."
"Better call ground control first. Don't want to wake Feldspar until we have to." Ponder turned the appropriate dial on the radio and pushed to talk. "Ponder to ground control. Hornfels, you there? Score?" There was some strange static. Was that heavy breathing? Something was making an awful racket in the background. It went quiet for a moment, and then a whisper.
"Shh, quiet. Who's there? Ponder? It's here." "Is that Hornfels?"
"Yeah, Ponder and Chuck," Ponder radioed back as quietly as they could. The easygoing old Hearthian whispered again, almost putting their lips to the microphone.
"They're petrified. It got out. The angler downstairs. The bramble seed called out, and everything shook. That's when it broke out. It's huge. It ate Score."
Chuck and Ponder both gave a horrified gasp.
"Hold on, we're coming,"
Ponder said.
"The seed is growing too fast. We have to stop it now. We have to get it off planet. We have a plan, but we need 2 ships. Hurry."
Ponder added juice to the throttle and changed the destination from Adelrock to the home crater. They cut the outbound signal so they wouldn't bring more attention to Hornfels. To think that something as strong and as fierce as Chuck was loose in the village, and this one full of hate and hunger.
"No," Chuck groaned through her teeth. "This is stupid. I told him not to feed him so much. He shouldn't have grown so big."
With the course laid in, Ponder took their hat off and held it close to their chest for a quiet moment. Then they said, "Score may have been a little strange, but they didn't deserve to go like that."
"I knew it. I knew something was wrong."
"You were right, but how did you know?" Ponder asked her.
"The seed called out to me again, just like it did before," she said.
Ponder looked at her with grave concern. "Did it try to control you?"
"It wanted to," she answered. "But it couldn't, 'cause she's one of us. And look, she's still afraid of who she is. She's still hiding.
Give me your hat." Chuck was confused, but took off her black cowboy hat and handed it to Ponder. Ponder took their pocket knife and stabbed it through the top of the hat at the front. Hey, what are you doing? She protested, but didn't stop him. They just kept cutting until they made a neat round hole. Come here, they said, and stood up out of their seat. The two of them stood face to face, with Chuck's light dangling between them. Ponder took the liberty of pushing the luminous bulb through the felt and threading the hat down to the top of her head. It fit just as well, only her bright Eska was revealed for all to see. You're a Hearthian to me, they told her. But today, I need you to be an angler. Her eyes welled up with emotion, more than her alien face could convey. Thank you. They shared a sweet moment. Then Chuck rolled her tentacles into fists and shook the ship with a dangerous rumble. I am an angler, and they're gonna regret messing with my space frogs. She's scary. That's good. Thankfully, Timber Hearth had orbited closer to the stranger, and the return trip was much shorter. The ship rocked as they entered the atmosphere at high velocity, close to the safety threshold. The radio crackled to life again. Hornfels wasn't whispering anymore. Ponder, come in. The angler left the observatory. It's headed for the village. Hornfels is alive, that's a relief. We're almost there. I'll cut him off. It's too big, Hornfels said. I don't know how, but it's a full-size angler. You can't do anything about it. Chuck leaned closer to the microphone. I can. Negative. There's no time. Feldspar's waiting for you at the crater. You have to go now. You have to save the planet. Ponder turned their attention away from the radio to focus on Landon. There below them was the observatory. The dome on the second floor was easy to spot, but the rest of the building looked wrong. Walls were broken out, and some of the museum's ceiling had collapsed. Where are you going? Chuck asked, seeing that they weren't headed for the seed. No one else is getting eaten today, Ponder vowed. They glanced at Chuck, and the two shared a determined nod. Where's that thing? Along the path from the observatory, the top of a young pine tree disappeared. Something knocked it down suddenly. There you are. They found a place to park that would let them get ahead of the rampage. There was barely enough space between the trees and the cliff. Thank Feldspar for all that practice. Ponder unbuckled as soon as they landed and headed for the hatch. Chuck beat him to it, and they both jumped down onto the dirt and pine needles. Good old Timber Hearth. No better place to make our stand. They started up the road, but didn't get far. Yikes. The beast was there, even more frightening than the first time Ponder had met him. Dark brown, almost black, with hateful eyes and tusks like tree trunks. There by the path was a mountaineering shack, and the creature turned his wrath on the little building. It attacked the little structure with hunger, hoping to reach the chewy center. With a snap of its jaws, it broke the beam of the corner. Then it threw its weight against the structure. The angler was as big as the house, and stronger, and the shack was leveled. Just before it collapsed, a Hearthian came screaming out the back door. They ran down the path toward Ponder and Chuck in a panic. They had almost made it to safety when they stopped cold, mouth gaping. Come on, Ponder said, waving them nearer, but the local didn't respond. Are they afraid of us? Behind Ponder, dirt and gravel crunched under a new weight, like you'd usually hear from big machinery or a rolling log. They turned to see another huge monster, paler, with traces of white makeup. Stars above, her teeth are like fence posts. They couldn't deny the view was frightening so close to a big predatory creature, but they smiled anyway. She looks a little silly with that tiny hat. Scorodite's pet chased the Hearthian, but stopped at the sight of his rival. It bellowed a challenge and brandished its tusks. Chuck roared in answer and moved forward to stake her claim. They were evenly matched. Her breath was such a gust, Ponder held onto their hat to keep it from blowing off. Never thought I'd be happy to hear a sound like that. The villager, terrified of both anglers, ran to the pine trees for shelter. No, not that way. Ponder sprinted up to the side of the path and cut into the trees to reach them as fast as they could. There's just a few trees here, and we're walled in by the cliff. Nobody should be caught in the middle of this fight. They made it to the frightened Hearthian. Come on, she's with me. You'll be safe this way, Ponder promised. What's happening? The poor fellow resisted, still petrified. It was too much to take in at a moment's notice. A huge dark mass crashed into the tree line. The hungry monster had followed the movement and lunged for him. Ponder and the bystander dodged out of the way and hunkered at the base of the cliff. Chuck charged, jabbing her tusks at his side. The space invader had to back up to parry her attack with his own tusks. Ponder took the chance. Come on, now! They grabbed the other Hearthian by the hand and pulled them along, stumbling over rocks and roots down the slope. Once they were well behind their protector, they got back on the trail. Satisfied the villager was safe, the pilot turned to make sure Chuck was all right. The two monsters were sizing each other up again, but much closer. Didn't think she'd actually fight to protect us, did you? We'll get used to it. The ravenous monster glowered at her hatefully. She was in the way. He just wanted to eat. He bobbed and slithered to the side, trying to go around her, to get to the village. Chuck lunged again, and the two creatures snapped at each other. The knock of big bones deflecting off each other was unlike any sound Ponder had heard before. The dark angler backed off again, but this time it was coiling its tentacles behind it. It started with a low growl that got louder and louder. It sprang forward and barreled into Chuck. They shoved and grunted, their tusks grinding together. The other creature had the high ground, and Chuck was pushed back down the road. Her tentacles flailed on loose dirt. She lowered her center of gravity and dug into the dirt, spreading out her tentacles and grabbing onto any rocks or cracks she could find. The monster shoving match ground to a halt. Then the two huge carnivores had nothing to do but savagely bite at each other. Their jaws clashed again and again, trying to get past each other's teeth. A sharp tooth swiped around Chuck's defenses and gave her a gash on the lip that would have been a mortal wound to Ponder. These anglers can take a beating. Hey, you! Get away from her! Ponder found a rock by the path and threw it at the evil angler's face. It was a pretty good hit by Hearthian standards, but it didn't seem to do much of anything. The creature from the museum disengaged from Chuck for the chance to swipe at the irritating, squishy blue person. He didn't get far before Chuck threatened him again with her natural weapons, forcing him to back up once again to defend. Ponder looked up to the sound of retro rockets. Is that Feldspar's ship? What are they doing here? The ship looked smaller than usual as it vectored toward the monster battle. It slowed down, almost as if it would land right in the middle of the fight. Feldspar, what are you doing? No, it wasn't landing. It wouldn't stop in time. It was headed straight for the angry beast. Even though he wasn't full grown, Ponder could see he was still bigger than the ship. No, Feldspar, don't do it, Ponder yelled, but with no radio it was fruitless. When anglerfish and Hearthian ships collide, anglerfish come out on top. Come on, Feldspar, you of all people should know that. Chuck saw it too, and let out a startled noise. Her size kept her from forming Hearthian words, but she gave a plaintive bark instead of the usual roar. In the cockpit, Feldspar watched the tops of the trees whip by. The adventurer swooped low in the little craft, guided by instinct. I'm coming, Charty, they muttered. The dark shape of the evil spacefish came into view on the landing camera. Good. Just what they were aiming for. This is for score, you big bastard! The noise got the creature's attention. He turned and opened his jaws to crush the threat. At the last moment, Feldspar opened the throttle to maximum. A huge jet of flames burst out from the boosters. The angler's face was enveloped in flames for a second, before the craft bobbed up out of reach. Its skin was scorched with black marks, and it screeched in pain. Chuck lurched forward, bellowing. The scarred angler snapped his fangs, but recoiled. He was afraid. He looked about frantically. Feldspar started in for another pass. Chuck advanced as he retreated. The big angler, the dark, scary monster, turned and ran away. Chuck chased after him, herding him away from the town. Feldspar followed overhead, ready to burn the creature again if it turned to fight. The two anglers oozed over the terrain, slithering along on their tentacles. Up through a minor canyon where a stream emptied into the home crater. Over the rocks and onto the grassy surface. But the wicked beast wasn't just running away. He was headed for something. He was following Dark Bramble's call. Ponder followed behind him for a little ways. I'm not doing any good. They turned and jogged back to their ship, thankful that it hadn't been damaged during the fight. Warnfell said they need me at Young Bark Crater. They strapped in, gave the essential gauges a glance, and took off into the sky of the homeworld. We need to make sure there is a homeworld when this is done. Ponder wasn't trying to join the pursuit, but they could see Feldspar hovering over it. They passed by and kept going to the seed. Looks like we're all going to the same place. They looked down into the crater through the landing camera and didn't like what they saw. There was the great seed, ever hungry. It spread out spiked roots faster than ever before. Half of the bottom was already taken over, despite the efforts of the little Hearthians scrambling around it. Ponder found a place to land on the far side of the evil seed. They threw off the straps and jumped down from the hatch. The scene around them was a confusing mess. The motorized saw table was smashed by the supernatural plant's appendages. Folks were running every which way and yelling. The thorny vines were growing, thicker than tree trunks, and so quick you could watch them go. It's not natural for a plant to move like that. Marl's whole crew had rallied to fight the seed. The Hearthians attacked it with axes and handsaws, struggling to save their planet. Even old Marl was there, swinging their weathered axe like there was no tomorrow. One was out of place, an engineer with old oil stains on their clothes and technical tools on their belt. That must be Slate. Slate met the astronaut. Where have you been? You and Feldspar were both supposed to be here ages ago. Sorry I'm late. We had to stop a big anglerfish from attacking the village, Ponder said as simply as they could. Now they're on their way here. Feldspar and Chuck and the evil angler. What are you talking about? Slate asked, before shaking their head. Never mind. Doesn't matter. I have a rig to connect your ships. With some tandem flying, we should have enough thrust to pick up that stupid seed. They led him over to a wide frame of heavy timbers that was attached to a lot of ropes and chains. Thankfully, the contraption was resting on some carts, but even with the wheels, it was a struggle to push it up under Ponder's craft. We gotta attach the braces here and here. The cable from the winch on the back of the ship goes through here. Ponder followed instructions and helped assemble it. I think I see how this works, but how do we let go after we pick it up? The winch will hold it in tension. When you let out more line, it should drop away, the engineer explained. Ponder paused. It should? What if it doesn't? Slate grunted. You pilots worry about everything. Just wiggle your ship. That'll shake it off. The young astronaut raised their eyebrows. The great Slate's technical solution is to wiggle? Give me another week and I'll make it fancy. This'll work. They made good progress, but soon loud, angry calls were echoing down from the tops of the cliffs. One giant, toothy creature spilled onto the path into Young Bark Crater, then another. Ponder ran to the workers at the seed, yelling and waving their arms. "Watch out! Everybody get back!" They didn't need to warn anyone. Massive creatures were charging toward them, with huge fangs bared. Everyone dropped their tools and made for shelter behind rocks and trees. The scorched anglerfish stopped in front of the seed and turned to face his pursuers. The space fishes growled at each other. Ponder could feel the monster's hateful glare. Then the dark angler heaved up on all his tentacles and raised himself up to the seed. He plunged into a murky portal, and in a moment, his last trailing tentacles disappeared into the mist. All the Hearthians watched from a distance, and Chuck stood guard for a minute. There was no sign of danger from the portals, but the seed's roots continued to stretch and grow. Feldspar put their ship down, and the crew regrouped in the clearing. Chuck shrank back to her normal size and slithered back into her Hearthian clothing. The astronauts and aliens came together for a huddle, with Marl as well.
"We've been chopping on this thing for an hour," Marl panted.
They were breathing so hard they looked like they were going to faint.
"It's still spreading. I don't think we can stop it."
"Our ships can lift the seed with the cargo harness, but just the seed," Slate said urgently. "As long as it's anchored down like that, there's nothing we can do."
"I can do it."
Everyone turned to Chuck with surprise.
"I can break the roots," she said.
"Be careful what you swallow. You know what can happen," Feldspar cautioned. She nodded, but this time she spoke more certainly than ever.
"I can do it, Dad. I was made for this." "Do you think you'll be okay getting so close to it?" Ponder tapped the side of their head. "That thing got you with mind games last time." "It doesn't matter," she said with determination. "There's no other way."
Feldspar yanked on Ponder's sleeve. "Come on, help me hook up my ship to the other end of Slate's contraption." Chuck watched the workers connect the long chains from the cargo harness to the ones that were already bound around the Dark Bramble seed. They didn't even bother fighting the giant vines anymore, just tried to work around them.
"Everyone's counting on me." It was time. No more hiding. She let her body go again, showing her true size. In a way, it felt good to stretch out, good to stop holding it in. But she still wasn't used to it, even though it was her natural form. She didn't like how distant and different it made her feel from everyone else. The world was a little darker and colder. She pushed herself across the dirt, closer to it. The gates of the seed brimmed with pale fog and bad memories. Memories of a bad place, where things like her belonged. An invisible shadow pulsed and reached out from it, pulling all light and living beings with a very real force. The nearest gate seemed to open wider, welcoming her. Is it actually getting bigger? No, it's an illusion. She looked away, but found her eyes drifting back into it. She felt like she could fall up into it by accident. No words, no sound, but it was communicating with her. It will consume everything eventually, no matter what we do. The Hearthians are doomed anyway, little insignificant creatures. A droning hum in her mind conveyed the thorny wisdom. This planet exists to be food for the bramble, and squishy little beings exist to be eaten by anglers. Anglers belong in the bramble. Feldspar's little girl roared. "You're not my home. You're not my destiny." The crater shook with the sound. She extended her massive jaws and bit down on the nearest root. Her teeth were bigger than its thorns and harder than its bark.
Crunch. Bits of black wood scattered in all directions. This is my home, and you can't take it away from me.